we both wrote down a number of names, and then we did our due diligence on that list of names. We whittled it down, and then we did research. Which names are available, which ones are taken, which ones have online assets that are available, and of all of those different choices, Lagging Balls, as semi-crass as that is, it had the most available. In fact, there was nothing called Lagging Balls anywhere, even though it was a common gamer phrase.
Oh yeah, and it commands attention, you know.
I guess.
So, I mean, if it was taken, were you going to go with like a slow scrotum or something like that? An alternate of some sort. But
you know what? I wonder if we have the old list somewhere. I'm not sure if we do, because I think it was handwritten.
Oh man, your listeners would probably get a kick out of that, and they could let you know which ones they thought were gems and which ones they were glad you didn't pick.
So. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sorry, Mac. I am adding questions here because I've found that his need to censor his bad words has caused him to not elaborate enough, so I'm going to have to press. It's stifling his creativity.
You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast with Dex and Mac. I got mouths to feed, so let's get this thing started. Time is money, friend.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Azeroth. You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast, your guide to making gold in World of Warcraft. This is episode 54. I'm your host, Dex, coming to you from Napa, California. With me on Skype is the man who changed his password to incorrect. Now, whenever he forgets what it is, his computer will say, your password is incorrect. My co-host, Mac, from Anchorage, Alaska. How you doing, Mac?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. At least I always remember the password eventually.
Yeah.
It's an age thing, you know.
You'll get there. It seems to always be an age thing with you. I found that.
I've joined the Blue Pill of the Month Club. Is that too many? 12 a year?
Wow.
Sorry, man.
Oh, man. So what's going on in WoW?
Not much. Again, had a fun time this week raiding with Lion's Pride Tavern. We actually got to kill Jaden. Have not killed Jaden. So he's still alive, Jaden.
Sounds like false advertising to me.
I'm still learning the mechanics, but yeah, no, we did pretty good. We got him down. We're in the second phase. I'm pretty sure next week we'll nail it.
Cool.
And we also want to talk about the Lion's Pride Tavern. We want to congratulate them for 1 year of podcasting. It's their 1 year anniversary, or they just passed. And
awesome.
Like to tell them, I'd like to thank them for inviting me and Dex on their show to raid. Of course, Dex is still slacking and hasn't quite made it there.
At least you don't harp on that. Yeah. I mean, at least there's that. But
well, you know, I've got to put a dig in there and try to get your keister at the keyboard.
Seriously, guys, big congratulations on 1 year. That's a great accomplishment. You know, it's as a podcast that recently made that milestone ourselves. We know what goes into it. And you guys are putting out great podcasts every week, and look forward to more and more of it. This week, we are going to be doing part one of a two-part interview where we're interviewing the co-hosts of Lagging Balls. Tonight is going to be Thorn, and next week is going to be Thist. And so we'll get that out to you. But because we're doing that, we're gonna kind of cut the opening a little bit short, and we're not gonna ramble on like we normally do about our week and all of that too much. Just so we can kind of keep the size of the show a little bit under control. Joining us on the show this week is Thorn from the podcast Lagging Balls. How's it going, man?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Good to have you.
And we appreciate you giving us this interview. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, etc.
Hi, I'm Thorn. I like to party.
You've come to the right place.
All right. So I hear. Seriously, though, I'm Thorn. I'm from the Lagging Balls podcast and also now the LB stream on Twitch. And I'm Guildmaster of Blood of the Scribe on Boulder Fist US, established 2009. And former Director of Marketing for Divergent Gaming and current Director of Marketing for an experiential marketing agency on the East Coast in the US.
Wow, Mac, you really feel inadequate now after hearing that, don't you?
I know you always try to make me feel inadequate, but
It's really not that much of an effort. I got to tell you, it just kind of goes naturally. But, why don't you tell us a little bit about when you first started playing WoW, what year you started, what was going on at the time, maybe who it was that got you started on this addiction, and your first character, what was the race and class, and maybe why you chose that.
The glory days, right? Well, it was end of 2008. It was mid Wrath of the Lich King. I picked up the free DVD in a store to try out the first. Where kids these days are all lucky to have the free to 20 direct download digital version only, right?
Right.
But back in the early days when you had to buy the game and load it off of 6 different CDs, right?
I remember.
Yeah. So the initial version, I forget if it was also the first 20 levels. I don't really remember how it worked. But the initial try was off of a trial DVD, much like the old AOL internet CDs they had back in the day. But yeah,
I started off on CompuServe.
Oh my God, yeah, there you go. So I had 2 different sets of friends who were playing at the time. One set of friends who was on Horde and one set of friends who was on Alliance. So between the 2 of them, I was just hearing so much about the game that I was just, I had already been interested, and then I saw that free trial. And so that was kind of the start.
They always have to get you started. They have to give you that first little taste.
Yeah.
First one's free.
Friends don't let friends play Alliance. So which friends won out? The ones that you would go to the same bars with, or the other ones?
The Horde. Or the Horde. And have never looked back. I did have a short stint on the other side, specifically to play with a different group of friends, but I never left Horde the entire time. Yeah. And it's funny, too, because the group of friends who was Alliance were actually a closer group of friends. And the Horde group of friends I didn't know very well. And now it turns out we've been friends even longer at this point. And the Blood of the Scribe is on Boulder Fist US, a PvP server, and it's all Horde.
So you're saying that you pretty much did Horde, but you experimented a little bit with Alliance.
Yeah, just in college.
I was
experimented a little in college.
Now you stole my joke. I was about to say Mac experimented a little in college too, but we don't talk about that. Now I'm going to have to, through the magic of editing, make it look like that was my joke. No, anyways.
Your voice will just go up an octave suddenly.
It was totally me, but I'm not that good at editing. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Prior to WoW, did you play any other MMOs? Or the other games you played? And if so, which ones were they? I
played plenty of games, but not any other MMOs. I was a filthy casual. I played old consoles before that. In fact, I took a big break from gaming on consoles between roughly Nintendo 64 and the Nintendo Wii was the next time that I came back to it. And the Wii was, I think, just the year before, maybe 2 years before I started playing WoW.
Cool. So now you already said a little bit about Realm that you played on and all of that. But your focus is, I think you said your focus is mainly PvP. Is that correct?
Well, I actually prefer PvE, but I do prefer PvE on a PvP server. And I'll tell you why. So I've played both. But first of all, it was ingrained in me early. I mentioned 2 different groups of friends on 2 different factions, but both of them were aligned on this thinking that PvE servers and PvE only was baby mode, and that if you really wanted to play the game with the training wheels off, you play on a PvP server.
Right. Well, and anybody who doesn't play on a PvP server, which I do, anybody who doesn't won't get that. There's something. Well, no, I wasn't pointing that directly at Max. Sometimes you get hit by a little bit of the
a splashback, right?
Well, it happens, but I wasn't directly pointing that at him. I'm just saying in general, if you don't play on PvP, it might be a kind of a foreign concept to you that at any moment, world PvP can break out. And it's actually a lot more rare than what people think on most of the PvP realms. It just doesn't happen that often, really. But if you're ever in a situation to where somebody's being kind of an ass, and you want to deal with them, you do have a choice if they're the other faction. So.
Yeah, and back in the day, I think some of the things that might have been the conflicts that might have sparked some of those things, like if you're farming in an area or you're trying to quest and kill mobs with a rare with a low drop rate for a quest or something like that, those sorts of disagreements I think would pop up more often. And these days, in order to run into world PvP, somebody just has to make a choice to target and engage, right?
Right.
So.
Well, I ended up, I used to play around with PvP in other games a little bit, but I ended up on Demon Soul only because my oldest son, he was playing on that. He had a raiding guild that he ran on the realm, and he wanted me to come over and and play with him and his buddies for a little while. So all right, I'll go over there. And when I got there, it was interesting because it was before they merged all of these connected realms. And so at the time, it was like 90% Horde and 10% Alliance. So World PvP just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Alliance didn't mess with Horde at all. They were kind of like, leave Britain. Excuse me. They were kind of like leave Brittany. I can't even say that. Forget that joke. Yeah, they were like that Cocker guy, leave Brittany alone, right? Leave me alone. Just let me be, right? And from the Horde perspective, it's like, look, we got them outgunned, like almost 10-1. We don't want them to all rage quit, so don't mess with them. If something happens, it happens. But for the most part, as Horde, if you ran across somebody's alliance, you would actually wave at them and move along.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
that's good form.
So, yeah, it was. I expected it to be PvP, and I was a little disappointed. And then they did the connected realms, and boy, did it change, because we connected to some alliance heavy realms, and it's about 50-50 now.
Did you see an immediate change on that?
Oh yeah, it was wild. And I forget. I think it was. As a matter of fact, I think it was when Cataclysm. I want to say it was about the time Cataclysm went live that it happened, but maybe it was after that. But I think it happened about Cataclysm.
So did you see a spike in that world PvP engagement after those connected realms came together, and then has it tapered off since?
Yeah, it did taper off after, but the expansion that came out right after that, trying to go through and level up was interesting, because it was every single little hub was a lot of fighting, and it was interesting, but I kept feeling like, the blue realms are they're progressing a lot faster and leveling a lot faster. I kind of feel like, because I'm doing a lot of running back to my corpse kind of stuff, because you get jumped by like 5 to 10 of the other side. But it was interesting. but yeah, I'm a fan of PvP myself, and
yeah, I don't actually PvP, but I feel like the opportunity for that to happen at any time. Obviously not in a sanctuary city or any of those places where, there are plenty of places within the game, for those who are unfamiliar, where you're safe from PvP. Right. So most of the major cities, those sorts of things, it's not really happening. But out in the world, obviously, you're kind of fair game. But even so, just like you were saying, Dex, it just doesn't happen. So the thing that I like about it is it adds an element of danger, Right. So when you're out in the world, you have to be a little aware. And when you see somebody from the other faction,
Yeah. Well, let's face it. We're talking about WoW. For the most part, if you don't have PvP, there really isn't any danger. It's not one of those. It's not one of those games that has any built-in serious penalties or anything like that. We're old time. Mac and I are old time players. We played EverQuest and some of the older games that you actually lost experience. You could lose levels and everything else from dying.
Sometimes multiple levels.
Wouldn't you lose wouldn't you drop all your loot and everything once you died too in one of those?
There were some realms that had that, and early on when the game first started, that's how it was in PvP. But they ended up eventually having only one realm where that was the truth on EverQuest.
Yeah, early on when you died, you lost. I mean, everything dropped off your corpse. You had to go back and retrieve it.
Yeah.
And if you were on a raid and it was deep inside the dungeon, now you got to try to run down there naked and get the stuff out past all the mobs that have respawned.
Right.
It sucked.
So let me just say that you're talking about it sucking on PvP for this. Let me just point something out to you. Where you lost all your stuff was not in PvP. It was in PvE when your corpse fell into a wall and became inaccessible because of a glitch in the game.
No.
And you had 2 years worth of gear that you worked to get that was gone forever in a second.
And then the GM was nice enough to say, well, I found out what the problem is. Your body fell into the wall. I can't pull it to the entrance for you, but I'll pull it out of the wall for you after you've lost 5 or 6 levels.
This is something that actually happened to me.
It happened to him.
Get all my stuff, yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about a game to where they did an experiment where they had a realm that they opened, and it was a permadeath. It was a permadeath realm.
Oh my God!
The way it worked was you get up to level 50. If you died, you respawned as level 1.
Oh my Lord!
And it was they originally I think they were going to see how long people would put up with it. But if you can imagine the drama, and we're talking about the days when a lot of people were still on dial-up, and you lose your connection and you die to some low-level mob because you're not there.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I mean, we played some hardcore stuff. So when we're looking at WoW and it's like, oh, I died, so I have to run back 60 yards back to my corpse. Oh, what a hardship,
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, this realm that I was talking about, they ended up changing it to like a 1-month experiment. And the goal was to see who could get to the highest, who'd be the highest level at the end of the experiment. So it was really interesting. But
that's nuts.
Yeah. Let's just say the kids wouldn't go for that today. Anyway, now that we've gone way off in left field.
Way off left field, yeah.
I blame Matt.
You normally do. So Thorne, how would you? I mean, I know we know you like PvP, but how would you classify yourself? Or you like a PvP realm? How would you classify yourself as a player? You hardcore raider, filthy casual, somewhere in between? Do you prefer to solo or do dungeons or just raid?
Honestly, it's kind of both hard and casual. And what I mean by that is that I'm a heroic raider on the one side who's not terribly far from the top of the DPS charts, if I do say so myself. But I'm not stuck on things like min-maxing or constant AP grinds or world quests and that sort of thing. And honestly, right. I think that's one of my favorite things about the current state of the game, that I can do both.
Right.
Rock on.
Yeah. That's cool. In terms of content, I prefer to raid, and we raid about 6 hours a week, so pretty happy with that.
All right. Well, listen, at some point in your WoW adventures, you decided that you wanted to make this podcasting thing happen for you in WoW. And why don't you tell us what inspired the podcast, and at what point in your playing history did this happen?
Oh, great question. I'm really glad you asked that. Wait, I'm a podcaster? No, I'd been an avid listener for years. Started listening to things like The Instance early on,
right.
And wanted to try it for years after I started listening to things like Convert to Raid. And then Fist, her interest in doing the same is actually what inspired me. We talked about it a number of times and kept doing that thing where we're like, we just had such a great conversation. That would have been great if we had a show or something like that.
Right.
And then we talked about that enough times and got off our duffs finally. During Warlords of Draenor, which was actually kind of a rough time.
Yeah.
So we had some friends who were like, "Really, you really want to talk about that game right now?" Because a lot of shows at the time were pretty down on the game in the long winter that was Warlords of Draenor.
But you had an explicit podcast, so you could actually talk about the. No, I'm sorry.
True. Yes.
Say what you really felt, right?
Yes. Yeah. Those who are unfamiliar with our show it's not clear to you how good I'm being right now.
Well, you know what? I have to say, I was kind of thinking that a little bit. I was thinking, Wow, he's really making the editing easy on me because our podcast we keep it non-explicit, and I was wondering just exactly how much of my beeps I was going to have to use in the show. But so far you've been really kind to me because that makes work for me.
Well, here comes one for you. Get ready to beep this one.
Oh no,
poopy butts.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh man, so you and This got together and decided to put the podcast together, Lagging Balls. Who came up with the name?
Fist did.
Okay.
If we're being honest here, Fist is the creative one. She's the funny one. She's the interesting one. So stay tuned for the interview with her separately because that'll be the fun one. We both wrote down a number of names, and then we did our due diligence on that list of names. We whittled it down, and then we did research. Which names are available, which ones are taken, which ones have online assets that are available. And of all of those different choices, Lagging Balls, as semi-crass as that is, it had the most available. In fact, there was nothing called Lagging Balls anywhere, even though it was a common gamer phrase.
Oh, yeah. And it commands attention, you know.
I guess.
So... I mean, if it was taken, were you going to go with like a slow scrotum or something like that? An alternate of some sort. But.
You know what? I wonder if we have the old list somewhere. I'm not sure if we do because I think it was handwritten.
Oh, man, your listeners would probably get a kick out of that, and they could let you know which ones they thought were gems and which ones they were glad you didn't pick.
So. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sorry, Mac, I am adding questions here because I've found that his need to censor his bad words has caused him to not elaborate enough, so I'm going to have to press. It's stifling his creativity. Oh, wow. So I have no idea where we are in the notes now.
So Thorne, when did you realize this podcasting thing was really working for you? What was your aha moment?
Well, I would say we thought it was working for us as the community and listenership around it grew. We track things as we all do. All of us who are doing these shows, we're all obsessed with the metrics around our show, right? So you're watching the listenership, you're seeing if it's going up or down, you're seeing what weeks do better than others. What was that show topic? Maybe we should stay away from that one, in the future because it didn't play well. Those sorts of things.
Well, we don't, but you should.
Fair enough.
We hit double digits last week, by the way. Double digits.
Congratulations.
So, anyway, go ahead.
Hello out there to all 11 of you.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
No, but you notice at least the if nothing else, the general listenership, right? You're watching at least that much, and so we were doing the same thing. And since it continued to grow, that was an indicator to me that it was really working for us. But the real aha moment that I would I guess define that way was last year at BlizzCon. It was our first BlizzCon for both of us, for both Fist and I. And this dude walks up to me in a bear costume, and he says, "Bye, Felicia," which is my catchphrase for the end of the show. Right. And I'd never heard anybody repeat that back to me, and I'd certainly never been approached in person and had that said to me in that context. So, I didn't even have a response for the guy. I just kind of pointed and laughed. Which was probably really lame, honestly, as a response to something, because I was just so shocked. And that I was just like, wow, that was awesome.
You should have yelled security at the top of your
Get this bear out of here.
Oh, man. Hey, maybe we'll have a moment like that at BlizzCon this year. I mean, have you called all of our listeners and asked if any of them are going, Matt? I mean, you've got them all on speed dial, I think. Every one of them is.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, I've actually had somebody let us know on Twitter that they're going to be there. So, yeah, we'll at least have one. Yeah,
awesome.
We have invited all of our listeners to buy us drinks. While we're there.
Oh, that's a good idea. Oh my God, that's just a brilliant idea.
Most people ask for donations, they GoFundMe or something like that. We're like, we'll be in the bar and we'll be ready for alcohol. So
that's brilliant.
Okay, so why don't you tell us just if you had to generalize the philosophy of your podcast, just kind of I mean, not really a mission statement, I guess, but really how you would quantify what you try to do each show.
Sure. Well, we kind of approach the show such that we just want to be viewed as the friends you play games with.
Okay.
That's it. That's kind of it. We have potty mouths. We play all the same games that you do. We get tilted. We laugh like crazy and then cry. And then, we're decent players, but we're not OP. We're not full of ourselves. But we really, honestly, we keep a focus on two things. One of those is being positive, because I mentioned that we started the show in the Warlords of Draenor era. And one of the things that pushed us over the edge about starting right then was all of the negativity that was out there. And it was just, people come here to these shows. They come to your show because they want to hear how to get rich in the game, right? They want to know how, because that means they're playing this game, right?
And so aren't they surprised, Joe?
But they're not coming in here for you to talk about, what a crappy auction house system it is, or how much you hate, being filthy rich in this game. Like, they want to hear about fun, because that's they care enough about the game to seek out content about it when they're away from that game. Right. So why wouldn't we give them positivity, right?
Oh, absolutely. And if they are, and here's the thing that I heard a lot of complaining during Warlords, and if we're going to be honest, mistakes were made. We do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being positive doesn't mean ignoring those.
But here's my question on that. If somebody is actively playing the game and they're listening to podcasts, if you're listening to podcasts about the game that you're playing, you are in a very small minority of people that play the game. You're actually in a small minority. If you listen to podcasts, you're pretty serious about the game. You like the game. You have especially if you listen to a kind of a niche podcast like what we have about gold making. That's an even narrower focus, because most people that play the game and they don't really do a lot of these extra things. So if you're one of those people that you're hardcore enough that you play the game and you listen to podcasts, and you're complaining about the game nonstop, why are you playing? Why are you so, why are you still playing? Why are you so fired up about it and interested in it if everything you see about it is negative? So I really feel like that, it's more that they're passionate. It's not that they hate the game. It's that they're so passionate about it that these things that they really feel could be better, they're just voicing it a lot. And that makes sense. If you're one of those passionate people, you're gonna let it be known just exactly what you think about every little thing. But there are things that they still like about the game, and that's why they're playing.
Absolutely, and that's a solid point. I should clarify. I wasn't just listening and criticizing everyone at the time.
Oh no!
I definitely no.
Absolutely,
I agree. If you the fact that you play something and love it enough to create content like we do. Like the fact that we're two sets of podcasters here, creating content around a game we love that much. You're doing it because you love it,
right? So, but I meant actually, if as far as your listeners, if your listeners are kind of upset about things that are going on in the game, I don't look at that as them hating the game. I look at that as them just being passionate about the game and
absolutely,
and, wanting it to be better, and so. Anybody who, if they're podcast, if they dwell on all the negative, which actually some podcasters did fall into the trap of doing, you're really not doing anything good for the game or for for your listeners, making them just kind of feel more miserable, I guess.
Yeah. But that's why
I apologize if I'm rambling. I forgot to drink today. So
not at all. No, you can fix that right now. Now's a good time for that.
I think Mrs. Dex is probably keeping an eye on the liquor cabinet.
Too far away right now.
Oh, no. I can ramble a bit if you want to go run for it.
Through the magic of editing, I can just fix it.
There you go. But yeah, that's why we focus on being positive. The other thing that we focus on, and we try to make this a central point at all times, is having fun, because they're freaking games after all. That's what we're talking about, and we never want to lose sight of that.
And I don't know if you've run into this, but we have. The episodes that we don't really get around. There are a few episodes that we don't really get around to talking about gold really at all, or very little. But we have a really good time and a lot of joking back and forth. It's amazing. We get letters where, oh, that was your best episode you've ever made. It's like, I don't think we talked. I'm like, Mac, I don't think we talked about gold.
This gives him a little area where he can harass me nonstop, and lots of people can hear about it. So
right. Well, and I actually point out to Max, see, they don't want to hear about gold. They want to hear about your shortcomings, and I got a list. Anyway,
so Thorne, your dadgummit. Your podcast has been running for a little over 2 years now. You've got about 113 episodes up. And we've been running about a year now, and we've had some changes in our format. What changes have you made in your podcast over the last 2 years?
Well, hey, congrats on the year mark. That's awesome.
Thanks.
By the way, that's just killer. So keep it up, guys, because you've both got really great voices for this. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but it's a lot of fun.
They've said that we have faces for radio. We've heard that.
So I've been told by
Fair
Mrs.
enough.
Mack. Yeah.
Oh, people tell me that as well, but I thought that was a good thing, right? That's a positive thing.
I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good, because that's what I thought.
My assumption.
I'm glad I'm leaving this show with the same assumption that I came in with. I appreciate you confirming that for me. On our show, we used to try and cover it all in the beginning, and we changed tack on that pretty fast because we were finding that we were trying to cover things that we didn't play as much or that we didn't know very well, and it just made us feel kind of dumb. Thist and I are not the strongest gold makers. We'll get to that in a minute, I'm sure. So if we were trying to focus on something that was related to that, we could only touch the surface on it. And we were finding in listening back through our episodes after they were finished that the better moments came during the departures, So we used to kind of try and keep things on track and get through the news and that sort of thing. But now we let those distractions and forays kind of flow us in other directions. And honestly, it turns out that usually the best and funniest moments happen there instead.
Well, I know that with Mac and I, we used to, in the very beginning, probably the first 10 to 12 episodes, Mac can correct me if I'm wrong on the number. I think it's about there. We had pretty extensive notes that we would have for our shows. And we gradually loosened that up and made more of a guideline. And the shows got better when we weren't as tight about what we were trying to talk about. And the other thing is we got lazy as hell. So we didn't want to do detailed show notes. But being able to say, Mac, when I just kind of half-assed do the notes, things go better. So I'm not, and he's like, he's not fooled. And he's saying, so you didn't have time again this week? So anyway, I mean, you hear in the show, I'm kind of nailing him left and right on things in the show. But outside of the show, when we're not recording, it does go the other way quite a bit.
He's just much nicer to you on air.
He's nicer to me on air because I've got my finger on the edit button. So I can make it sound like he stuttered for 10 minutes if he really messes with me. But anyway. So
you'll hear us go. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say your format. Now you did move from a World of Warcraft podcast to more of a generalized Blizzard podcast, right? I mean, that's kind of where
that's true, and we did that pretty early on.
Okay,
because we were, again, it was Warlords era. There just wasn't that much going on. There wasn't that much to say, and everybody was covering the same couple of things. So whenever there was any sort of news about the next expansion or anything, they were doing late expansion, everybody covered the same thing. And it was just, as a new show around then, we were thinking about I have a marketing background, right? So I'm thinking in terms of things like, what are our differentiators? What sets us apart? What makes us unique? What makes us not just the same show that goes through all of the weekly news like everybody else, even though that's still what we do at our core. Sure. That's the guideline list that you're talking about. That's just subject matter to talk about.
We're jealous of anybody who does a general World of Warcraft or a general Blizzard podcast because if your podcast is only about gold making and it's only about gold making in World of Warcraft, you got kind of I got to admit, after about a year in, we're kind of going, so what can we talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, sure,
what is there left to say? So it does give you an advantage, but you have a broad enough area that you can cover there is really no need, I don't think, for you guys to go beyond your comfort zone on that. I mean, you can talk about what you're comfortable about and what you know the most about and what you feel is going to be the most entertaining. And, you guys are going to continue to do great like that. I think it's a great choice that you made, not trying to, be all things to all people, but still keep it kind of generalized.
Thanks.
I think it was a great choice. And obviously it's working for you because, you've got a good following and everything. And, people know who you guys are. They stalk you at BlizzCon and all that, as we've established.
And
I'm not a stalker at BlizzCon. I'm sorry, but I'm stuck on that. If I don't have a stalker at BlizzCon that's like buying me drinks whether I want him to or not, I'm going to be really disappointed now.
If he doesn't wake up with his pants around his ankles in a bush outside of the Anaheim Convention Center, guys, he's going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Well, that'll happen whether I'm buying them or they're buying them. It's just it'll make it more financially feasible is all.
Okay, if he doesn't
I'm trying to finance my binge.
If he doesn't wake up in a bush with his pants around his ankles and a still full wallet, he's going to be very disappointed.
There we go.
Well, at least before I passed out, I had a full wallet. But
Yeah.
So every player in the game, has to support their tunes. You knew we were going to get around to some gold making questions eventually. Our listeners are
Indeed.
going, finally. So you got to pay for repairs. If you like transmog or rating consumables, you're going through a little bit of cash here and there. How do you make gold in the game? What's your method of choice?
You guys are absolutely going to hate this answer.
Dancing on the mailbox naked?
No, but that. Thank you, because I'll try that.
Okay.
I mostly don't try, honestly. I mostly accumulate what the game gives me for questing and dungeons and all the rest. In the recent past, I would focus on one profession and sell mats or items from that. That's still relatively true. I have alts with gathering professions, so I'll do things like some farming here and there and then just sell off the mats. That means I don't have a lot of money I should say gold. I don't have a lot of money either, but I also don't have in-game gold to be buying things like mounts or any of the special things. So more recently, I actually purchased a WoW token, and that got me the most gold I've ever had in the game, period, ever. So there were a couple of times in previous expansions where I tried to corner the market on this or that set of mats, and I just failed spectacularly. So kind of stopped doing that.
Okay, but you did get rich during Warlords, though, right?
I did not. No.
You did not? Okay.
Was that a good time to get rich?
Okay. I mean, if you've got 30 level 3 garrisons completely decked out,
fair enough.
It's kind of hard not to make gold, but
yeah, fair enough.
But then again, I ended up playing the game doing things that weren't so much fun too much of my time. So Warlords is kind of bittersweet. Made millions, but didn't really get to do a lot of fun stuff. And
so I was choosing not to do that stuff. So when I started to feel like I was getting burned out on those things, I stopped them across the board. Yeah. I would only do anything garrison related minimally on my main, and if I needed mats from this or that sort of thing, or if I was trying to build towards something, I might switch to an alt just to update the next building on this piece of something that I was trying to do, or execute it daily or something like that, daily cooldown, and that's it. So because I felt myself getting burned out by that, and I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. Shipyard, no thanks.
Yeah, I didn't.
I don't think either. I don't think either one of us have done the shipyard.
No, I mean I made one, but I didn't really do much of anything with it, just to see what it was.
Now you've got Wanna Buy Gold's Reckles in your guild. Has he given you any gold making advice? And have you used it?
Oh yeah. So he gives plenty of advice. I just don't use any of it. And that's not his fault.
Does he get frustrated and say, "Come on, this is all you gotta do"? No.
No, not frustrated. I'm not. I have yet to see that guy ever get frustrated. Honestly, he's one of the most positive, enthusiastic people I've ever run into.
He's a pretty easygoing guy.
Yeah, and we had a blast on his show. I bet. Oh, I bet. Yeah, because the way that he is on his show on YouTube is exactly the same way he is all the time.
Right.
So he's not putting on an act. He's not someone else most of the time, and then acting during that or anything like that. He's really just that guy. So as sunny and enthusiastic as he is, of course he encourages things. And whenever the topic comes up, he always has something really valuable to add to it. Yeah. And we've helped him out with some things for his show, just to, any content creator we have within the guild, and there are a few, whenever they have a need that is relevant to their channel or to their stream or whatever, we definitely try to jump in and help them out. So, for example, he was trying to do some farming in Silithus. Mm-hmm. So we went and created new Death Knights. I want to say there were 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
And it was all in this one night. So, hey, everybody on, if you can get on at 9 o'clock and let's all go create DKs. And we all leveled them all up together at the same time. And then we all brought them out to Silithus and we started farming for these drops, like these semi-rare drops in this certain section where you kind of do a circular farm of killing mobs and they would be respawning by the time you got around that circle.
Right.
And the drop rate was pretty decent. And then the pieces sold for a hell of a lot. So I forget how he did the math on it, but it was something ridiculous, like 50, 60K per hour of, when you would average out the amount of things that you would get to sell, for the amount of time he had to put in. So he's got his finger on the pulse of things like that I would just never, ever know, never, ever go and do an experience or anything like that. And he knows about it. He hears about it. He's monitoring these things just like I'm sure you guys are. So by him being in the guild, he's not only sharing those tips, but once in a while he is drawing us into his grand adventures of gold making.
Oh, that's great. And when you said that he's a genuine person, that's who he is. You can tell that. I mean, Mac and I were able to tell that, right, Mac? I mean, we were able to tell that right away. I mean,
we had a blast.
You know when somebody's, most people, you can tell if somebody is not really like that all the time. And for anybody that's wondering, yes, I am an asshole all the time. It never stops.
You're gonna have to beep yourself.
Wife's got divorce lawyer on speed dial. She's
no. No. Right next to the rest of the listeners, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But no, Reckles is great, and like I said, a real genuine guy, and we could definitely tell that.
Yeah, but between him and guys like you, I have more than enough info on ways to make lots of gold. It's honestly, I'm just missing the time factor.
Yeah, for somebody like yourself, that's you need gold to do everyday things, but you're not looking to make some huge purchases. But maybe you'd like a nice mount once in a while, or something like that does cost a bit of gold, or you're wanting to buy a token with gold. Somebody just casually wanting to make gold, there are a lot of ways that you can only spend just like a few minutes a day on something that will make you plenty of gold in the long run. So it doesn't really require a lot of time unless you're really wanting to be, big time gold maker or something like that. It's really
Goblin Tycoon.
And see, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm learning things today.
It's kind of a sliding scale. It depends on what you want to get out of it, and we've actually run into a lot of people that are like, all right, I want to spend a maximum of 10 minutes per day making gold, no more than that. What can I do? And there are answers to that. So some of them take a little bit of setup to begin with, but they're not the most efficient ways to make gold, but
sure.
There are ways that somebody that doesn't want to spend half their time playing doing that, can take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
But why don't you tell us what was your biggest in-game kind of I win World of Warcraft moment? Kind of where things went just awesome, just basically your most memorable, win moment in the game.
In terms of gold making, it was I had saved up a bunch of living steel, and I was actually going to use it for crafting. There were a number of different things I needed, and they were all based on living steel. And it took me, actually, the funny thing about it is it actually took me so long to save it all up that I didn't really need the gear that badly anymore by the time I got as much as I needed. So I turned around and sold it all instead and made something like 20 or 30 grand off of it. And that is hands down the biggest chunk of gold I've ever made in one kind of transaction. Or I think it might have been a couple, maybe 2-3 different stacks. Not full stacks, but I think it was, I experimented with it, just a couple of different size stacks to sell off of. But it took maybe a week, maybe tops, to get 20 to 30 K out of that, which was just awesome.
Oh, cool.
That's always great. So now we've all had them. Why don't you tell us, Thorne, what was your biggest oops moment in the game? It doesn't have to be gold related, but we've all had one. Which one stands out for you that you wish you had a do-over on?
Okay, all right. Put me on the spot here, guys.
I know Mrs. Mack would say when I said I do, but,
Is that true, Dex?
I'm just thinking about episode 1 and my choice for a podcasting co-host. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, mine is easy. Early in my career in WoW, I had chose my first main. I couldn't tell you what level I was, but I can tell you it was embarrassingly high before somebody finally told me that I didn't actually need to balance all of the main stats on my toon.
You know what? That's actually something that a lot of people have done. I've heard of that before, where other people have said that. I didn't know which stats were the important ones for my class. I've heard that before.
Or you've deleted your toon because you couldn't find a place to buy food.
Yeah, he did that.
What?
EverQuest, you used to get this. Your character's hungry. Blah blah blah. I can't remember the exact terms, but yeah, I deleted a character.
It was just a nag message, and you had to find a vendor to buy food from. And rather than figure out where the vendor was, the character that he'd spent like days building up the level to where it was, he just deleted it and made another one because he was starving to death. So.
Now you die. We're not waiting. You're not wasting away. You die now.
Yeah.
So this is for the new players out there. If you were starting over from scratch today, how would you begin? What method would you use to level and progress your characters? What things? I mean, along the way, you've probably learned more efficient ways to do certain things in the game. If there were one piece of advice that you would give somebody, how to do things, more efficiently, what would that be?
Can I answer that a slightly different way?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I don't believe in the efficiency as starting out.
Okay.
I think if you're starting out square one, just experiencing this game, I would instead suggest that you start 2 to 3 different characters all at once, all on different races. Experience a variety of different play styles and starting zones, and find out what kind of fits for you. Because in essence, we all spend a lot of time in this game, even at the extremely accelerated pace of the modern version of the game. I feel like it's much better to get a better feel for as much as possible of it early on.
Okay. So kind of avoiding the whole I'll play the flavor of the month thing. Let me experiment around and see what works before I invest a ton of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because I don't know about you guys, but I've had mains before that I went into raiding with and found out that I'm just terrible.
What is raiding?
Not even just bad.
Raiding. I keep hearing that term. Sorry, I don't raid.
I'm getting better with it, but that's the whole reason I made a Demon Hunter, was to raid with the Lion's Pride Tavern when they invited us over to raid with them on their server.
Nice.
And their alliance, and I didn't have an alliance to the right level, so I figured I could make a Demon Hunter and get him up to 110 quickly. And I got there, and I'm getting better, but man, I'm a terrible Demon Hunter.
Well, I was curious about that. I don't raid, but I'm thinking to myself, if you're having to be in melee range all the time, isn't it going to be harder to stay out of all the crap you're not supposed to be standing in? Isn't it? If your range class, isn't that going to be easier?
It's funny that you should say that. That was one of my early thoughts on when I chose my first characters. Yeah. But I just feel like, for example, I was really, really into my shaman in, this was in Mists of Pandaria. Mm-hmm. And I loved playing him. It was my first time with the class. I leveled him from the bottom right in there. Started raiding on him. Found out I was just the worst resto shaman the world has ever seen. And then I switched mains and had a grand old time and was very, very good on my paladin instead. So
there we go.
I was not, and that was a DPS paladin. That was a ret paladin, so a complete shift. And it was more fun and it was more fulfilling. And that's what I mean is just, you have to spend so much time on these, and you're obviously not going to get an end game feel by trying a lot of different characters at once or a lot of different classes, but you're not going to get any feel for them at all if you're only playing one from the beginning.
Yeah, I did a shaman just to get the shaman mount, and I tried to level all the different specs. I ended up having to go enhancement. Just it was the easiest one to level.
Nice.
So, anyways, is there a piece of advice you'd like to pass on to our listeners? Something we haven't covered so far?
Something kind of basic, I guess, but in terms of how I talked earlier about keeping things focused on positivity and fun, I would say identify anything that's holding you back from having any fun in WoW or any other game, and either eliminate it or move away from it or find a different group of people to play with if that's part of the problem. But just remember to keep fun at the center of it all, because especially in an MMO, we can often get off on things that maybe this expansion aren't as good anymore, or were something that you enjoyed with a certain group of people, but don't so much now with this one. There's all these things, and sometimes, especially in an MMO, you can find that you've spent a whole lot of time going down a path that's just not that enjoyable to you.
Yeah.
So
that's good advice.
Yeah, keep fun.
I think
keep fun at the center.
That. Yeah, we tend to lose sight of that. I think a lot of us, and I know with gold making, we say this a lot. If you find that you're spending 90% of your time making gold and 10% of your time actually playing the game, unless that's what you want to do, unless that's where you want to be, find some balance and make sure you're enjoying the game. Because if you're not, you're gonna just lose interest, or like Mac usually does, just rage quit one day. When you're out of when the alcohol's gone and there's no more red meat to eat, and you just rage quit. So anyway, besides our podcast and you guys and your podcast, and there are a lot of people out there devoted to bringing World of Warcraft content out there. Is there anybody out there you'd like to single out as somebody worth giving a listen to or checking out? And you can name a few if you like. Maybe even somebody that would be a must-interview person for our podcast.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking, because there's so many great people in this community. Far too many to mention here, but I definitely want to shout out Ro.
Right.
Ro is a centralized point for anybody who... if you're into these kinds of podcasts, if you're into content about this game outside of the game itself, Ro is a really great kind of hub to hear about a lot of different types of shows. He's constantly having interviews on of people from different shows and things like that. He's got 2 different types of shows going, and then he gives you a podcast roundup at the end where he reminds me of like the old Micro Machines guy. You remember that guy from the commercials? He could just talk super fast like this, and he could talk through everything as fast as he wanted to. Yeah,
I remember that,
he goes into that mode at the end to get through kind of like all of the shows that have put out new content this week, and it's really impressive every time.
I think,
and that reminds me. Congrats, Ro, on 5 years.
Oh,
yes,
that's right. That's right. Oh, congratulations, Ro! 5 years, awesome. Yes, thank you for bringing Ro's
that up.
another. You mentioned Reckles. Ro's another one that's just a great guy. We had
a lot of
talking with him.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with him. We've been on his show, and he's been on our show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's kind of there's a writer named Sarah. She goes on. She's on Twitter as at Alternative Chat.
Right.
I really enjoy her ratings. Some of it's about Blizzard. A lot of it's actually not. And but it's obviously the Blizzard stuff that caught my attention. She talks about Blizzard stuff from time to time on her Twitter feed. She's really funny, really nice. But she's got this great edge to her, and her writing is just excellent. So I definitely suggest Sarah at Alternative Chat, all one word, on Twitter.
Okay.
I'd like to shout out my raid leader, Selvian, because he deals with all our crap and gets us through a lot of content. And so very many hilarious and inhumanly attractive listeners. My homies in the Blood of the Scribe Guild. Fist herself, because I must /bow, because she is just wonderful.
Awesome.
And then as far as your must interview, are you familiar with Kara? She's Zandara on Twitter. It's Xandara. She is super sweet, super supportive of the community. She's the kind of person who spends a lot of time supporting the community from a variety of angles, being present in things like Twitch streams, commenting on people's content that she creates, and at every turn, even when it's something that I'm maybe discovering for the first time or just getting into, she's already been there. She's already present for the live shows. She's commenting on there, and they know who she is. She's just one of those people who's a super supporter of this community, and she's far from the only one, but she's very, very. She really stands out as just a super positive and lovely contributor to the community. She's the kind of person that we all are so very happy to have as somebody to appreciate all the work that we're doing. So. She also gives us a really great interview, and I've heard a number with her on it, so I would definitely suggest her as a must interview for you.
Oh, awesome.
Listen, we really appreciate you coming on the show and doing the interview, and we look forward to interviewing your better half next. We'll have back-to-back shows of the interview here, and we'll find out the real truth next week after we talk to her. And I will get her to say questionable things about you. I'm just good at that.
I'm sure it won't be difficult.
I won't have to ask twice, I'm sure.
No. So you're I'm sorry. And your show, if people want to listen to you, I know you've got both your show and your new stream. Why don't you let people know how to get a hold of you?
Well, look, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I hope I didn't run too long. I have kind of a big mouth, so.
You've heard us.
Hey, yeah, you know what? That's why we fit
fine.
right away, right?
We're fine.
But thanks for having me. The Lagging Balls podcast is you can find anywhere on any of your favorite podcast outlets if you just search for Lagging Balls. You're really just not going to find that phrase bringing you anywhere else. This stream is now on Twitch, and the easy way to get to that is if you're familiar with the shortened URLs bit.ly, it's bit.ly. Okay. And we have some bit.lys for a few of our different things. So it's bit.ly/LB stream for the new show. That's Friday nights, 10 o'clock Eastern. And if you don't want to see it live, that's totally fine. There's replays available for it a week afterward on Twitch at that same link, bit.ly/LB stream. And the reason to watch it on there during that I think the following 2 weeks, is that you can still see the chat live as it happened during the show, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, if that part's not important to you, the replays of it are on YouTube, and that's bit.ly/LBTube. And then our Discord, where we actually spend a lot of time, day and night, kind of both being very active on there, is bit.ly/LBDiscord. I'm on Twitter at Thornbrow and at Lagging Balls. And thanks again, guys, for fighting the good fight and keeping us all stinking rich.
Awesome.
We certainly appreciate you coming.
All right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap up this week's episode. I'd like to thank Schaefer Bates for his awesome work as the Goblin voice at the beginning of each show. Also, Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for their theme music, Hot Rock, licensed under Creative Commons.
And if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can contact us at Mac, that's M-A-C, at GoblinGoldcast.com, or Dex, that's D-E-X, at GoblinGoldcast.com. We have an alternate email, MacGoblinGoldcast@gmail.com. You can contact us on Twitter at Goblin Goldcast, or you can visit us on Facebook.
And if you'd like to support the show, don't forget to visit the swag store at cafepress.com/Goblin Goldcast. And you can leave us a voicemail on our website, GoblinGoldcast.com. And please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Player FM if you listen there.
And we'll see you next week.
Now go make some gold.
Randy, you working on that sediment analysis?
Not now, Nelson. I just joined a big party of night elves, and we're going to explore the Tower of Azora together.
Is that a computer game?
No, Artard. It's an MMORPG. These are real people I'm playing with, see? I'm a hunter, level 2. I can chat with all these other people. I can even wave to this guy, see? Hello. In the outside world, I'm a simple geologist. But in here, I am Falcorn, defender of the Alliance. I've braved the Fargo Deep Mine, defeated the Bloodfish at Jared's Landing.
Looks like that guy just killed you.
What? Why? Why?